Tonight, someone saw Green Arrow and immediately tried to kill themselves. I believe that's what the kids call big mood. Justice League International falls themselves on the categorically wrong side of a class war, and Stormwatch might just have the best page in comic books ever. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 40 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and there is a Grant Morrison comic this week, so we're already running low on time just by value of that. So I'm going to keep this as brief as I can. I would like to say, however, this is the first week and I think it's like 2 months, where there is absolutely no event comic going on. And I got to tell you, I don't know how to do the show anymore. What do I do without an event comic? There are still comics crossing over with each other, a lot this week actually, but no actual named events, so that's cool. Regardless, coming out this week, in no particular order, we have the number 10 issues of Batwing, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Red Lanterns, Justice League International, Green Arrow, Stormwatch, Animal Man, and Swamp Thing. We have the number 2 issues of Earth 2, World's Finest, GI Combat, and Dial H, and we have the number 4 issue of the miniseries Night Force. In this one, they actually explain what's going on in that series, so now I can read it without feeling like an idiot. But I digress. Let's go ahead and jump into the comics this week, starting with some form of Batman. Detective Comics number 10, written by Tony S. Daniel, art by Ed Benes. Last issue was a tie-in to Night of the Owls, so who cares? This issue starts up with essentially a new arc. We are in Gotham City's business district, and this truck is, armored van making its way down the city. It's cut off by a minivan in which the door opens up and out steps a dude with a rocket launcher, blows up the armored truck. The guards get out and they're like, "Oh, geez, you all right? We gotta go. We gotta figure out what's going on." And they look up to see who it is that's attacking them, and it's a bunch of guys dressed as Batman, all with like machine guns and assault rifles and such. And the guards unload on the Batman unload on the guards. Guards are both dead, and the Batman break into the back of the armored van and steal a box. We are not privy to what is inside. So then we cut over to Gotham Memorial Hospital across town, and Bruce Wayne is visiting Charlotte, whatever her last name is, basically the love interest in Detective Comics. I genuinely thought this would have been over, but no, she's recovering from the last arc and basically is just writing herself out of the book. Bruce is like, hey, you don't have to worry. Everything will be all right. We'll hop on my jet and we'll go somewhere nice once you get all healed up. And she's like, "Bruce, here's the thing. My sister kind of betrayed me, and there's a lot of stuff that I have done, so I'm just going to move to Paris." And he's like, "Paris? Seriously?" And they hear a little booms outside, and so Bruce goes over to the window, and she's like, yeah, I just feel like I got to move on with my life. And he's like, "Yeah, no, totally, move on." And she's like, I just need to know that you're there, and I need to know that I can always come to you." And he's like, yeah, right, move on, got it. And she's like, "Are you listening to me?" And he goes over, gives her a hug. And then we see that she sees the explosions outside, and by the time she turns around to see, "Bruce, what's going on?" he's gone. So Jim and Gordon are getting every available unit they can to take down these Batmen, but the Batmen make their way down into the sewers, and Gordon and Bullock are like, "All right, well, I don't know if the real Batman's going to show up, but for now, we do this the old-fashioned police way. Seal off every exit. We'll flush him out eventually." So then we see the Batman moving underground, trying to get to wherever they need to be. One of them disappears into the shadows and is replaced by the actual Batman, who starts beating the crap out of all of them. I do like his internal monologue here of, "The acoustics in these tunnels makes it difficult to sneak up on someone. Advantage me." So he's beating them up. He finally grabs the Well, he tries to grab the final Batman, but that one actually has some acrobatics and a little bit of extra strength on him. So he manages to get behind Batman, put him in a chokehold, and then pull a ripcord on his utility belt, which causes him to explode. He had a suicide vest on him, and he just exploded. So, my mistake. That was actually the second to last Batman. The last Batman, he sees running down the tunnel. He gets trapped up in his grappling hook wire, and they have a little bit of a knife fight shortly. And then, once again, as soon as the other Batman realizes, like, I ain't walking out of this, he pulls a ripcord and explodes. And Batman's like, why are all these people killing themselves? Then we see, I'm just going to give you the name now. They give it later in the book, but it's Mr. Toxic, who's a dude with a skull, like black skull head, and like a Mr. Freeze style dome, but it's all red. His main color is red. So Batman's like recovering from the explosions, and as he is crawling his way up out of the sewer, some police guys who went into the sewers afterwards were like, hey, there's a Batman, can we shoot him? And he's like, no, I think that's the real one. They're like, so can we shoot him? He's like, no, let Batman go. So on top of the GCPD, Gordon and Bullock are meeting up with Batman. They basically say, okay, the thing that they stole came from this laboratory across state called Dunhill. We have some images, the crime scene files from when they took it. Pretty grisly, though, because everyone is literally melted. And back in the Batcave, Bruce is talking to Alfred, and they're like, okay, yeah, Dunhill. That sounds familiar. Didn't they make a Large Hadron Collider? And, like, apparently, Tony S. Daniel believes that the Large Hadron Collider is going to make time travel and alternate universe travel possible, which, no. But regardless, he looks over the surveillance footage and then notices a pop-up, like a screen, and then there's a little pop-up on that screen that has H&M on it. And H&M is the company that is a subsidiary of, or at least a workshop in Wayne Tower, run by that Hugh Martyr guy from like issue 2 of this book. And so he goes to the lab, he checks out what's going on in there, he finds all the melted goop and whatever, but he also feels like this energy moving about the place. So he turns on some visor, like special things so that he can see the radiation, and it all leads into one back room. He opens it up, and inside, as far as I can tell, is a Large Hadron Collider, which is weird considering those things are large, and this is just in Wayne Tower. But regardless, standing inside the collider is Hugh Martyr, and he's like, oh God, help me, Batman, save yourself, behind you. And then we see Mr. Toxic is there, and he zaps Batman with some radiation crap, and Batman is down for the count as we can literally like see his skeleton through his skin. And Mr. Toxic is like, ha, tonight the Cape Crusader dies. I like it. I think it's a good setup to a decent mystery. You know, why were all those Batmen there blowing themselves up? Why is there a Large Hadron Collider on what I can only assume is the 30th floor of the Wayne Tower? What's going on with that box thing that they stole and Mr. Toxic then picks up? I don't know. There's a lot going on here. It's a good mystery being set up. My only critique with it in any real capacity, and art is fantastic as well. I don't like the art is also great. But yeah, my only real critique with this in any real capacity is that I think Mr. Toxic showed up like 3-4 issues ago, and he felt like he was purposely played up there to be such a loser, and yet here I feel like we're supposed to take him really seriously. And it's just a little bit of a whiplash on that. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe he wasn't in that previous issue, but I like this character design is really familiar to me, so I'm pretty sure. However, it just feels like all of a sudden you can't introduce a villain as a loser and then in one issue's time make him a legitimate threat. That just, I don't know. I was always waiting for the punchline of like, oh, Mr. Toxic is behind this. Batman's just going to punch him in the face and we're done. But it never came. Like, he's actually stayed a threat. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens from there. But overall, I'm giving this a 7.5. Definitely looking forward to how it turns out. Art is fantastic. And I'm a little bit glad that Charlotte's writing herself out of the book. That's cool. Batwing number 10, written by Judd, Winick, art by Marcus Toe. We, last issue, had a tie-in to a different event, but before that, we left off with Batwing discovering that his brother is actually Massacre. And then I think we're just done with that. I don't think, because this is totally new stuff. So anyway, Tunisia Police Station, we see David talking to Kia, the female police officer that he is friends with, down in South Africa or wherever they're at. And basically he's just chewing her out for her poor filing skills, which I guess is his way of hitting on her, because he immediately turns around and asks her out for a drink, to which she says yes. Although she says she doesn't get off work until midnight, so it's going to be a late night. Then we cut to the Atlantic Ocean, 30 miles off the coast of Africa, where apparently some pirates have taken some yacht hostage, like they've taken the people on board hostage, and they're arguing about whether or not they're going to take the boat with them, I think. And there's a little bit of a back and forth on that between the pirates until Batwing swoops in, and he's like, man, I've been looking for these guys forever. It's really hard to find pirates in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. These guys are apparently known as the Jackals because they wear animal skins. I don't know whether or not they're important, but regardless, he starts beating up everybody there. And because he's so flashy and showy, they forget all about the fact that they have the upper hand in that they have hostages. But one of the pirates gets away and heads back to their old little dinghy and hops on the phone with some shady business person who wants him to make sure that the cargo is safe on the boat. So he runs down deeper into the hull. Batwing, I guess, is taking care of the rest of the pirates, and he follows after this guy. And when he gets into the room where the pirate was hiding, he stumbles across this unarmed man, an Asian man, who's just standing in the middle of the room. And then we see that the pirate is still on the phone with the businessman, who's like, all right, is the cargo safe? And the pirate's like, yep. And the businessman goes, good, beep. And the whole ship blows up. And so Batwing is okay because he has some stronger armor because of stuff that happened last issue. But he gets on the comms with Batman, and he's like, yeah, okay, this is because of my suit visor thing. I have a picture of the guy. Can we run it through facial recognition? And Batman's like, yeah, he's a Chinese nuclear scientist who went off the grid over a month ago. So at least they have some sort of lead, but they're wondering why he was just on a pirate boat off the coast of Africa. So then we cut to the Rivers Estate, or the Rivers State, which is where the Nigerian governor lives. And he's just talking politics and basically saying how he's going to strong arm a bunch of the world government people because they have oil and they'll pay whatever they need over in the western states or something. I don't know. Regardless, he's talking to his employees about this, and then he walks out and he's like, oh, but it's my grandson's birthday today. Granddaughter's birthday. So he goes out and enjoys a party. But as soon as he does, someone rams through his fence and gets to the center of the party in this tank-looking thing, drives into the mansion, and then explodes the mansion. This is now the second full-page spread of an explosion in this book. So Batwing is in Beijing along with Nightwing, and they're looking through the nuclear scientist place. And when they get there, it is completely cleaned out. There's literally nothing there for them to even find. But Batwing points out that he has a piece of tech that he can plug a thumb drive into a port in the wall, and he's able to track all of the ingoing and outgoing IP on his computer when it was there. So Nightwing makes the crack of man, Batman gives some pretty good toys, doesn't he? And Batwing goes, actually, I made this one. And Nightwing's like, oh, that's cool. So then we have Mateus just giving Batwing crap over the comms, and Nightwing is just eating it up. He just loves the gossip of it all. But then we see that so they're being surrounded outside by some Chinese mob or mafia or something like that. And as Mateus continuing to chew out Batwing, he sees the news of the explosion at the governor's estate, and then says how his family is dead. So I don't know if that was ever established, but I guess Mateus' family was the governor of Nigeria, I guess. Anyway, as soon as he sees that, Batwing and Nightwing are broken in on by the Chinese mafia or whatever. And they all have guns pointed right at him, and Batwing does a whole it's an even fight sort of thing. But then this one dude comes in and he takes off his jacket and he's like, "Oh, okay, so here's the thing. We've actually got you outmatched because I am," and he takes off his glasses and then starts transforming into a dragon. But he doesn't say that. What he actually says is, "My name is Long. Quote, do you know what long means in Chinese? It means dragon." Okay. So anyway, then we get the shady businessman who is apparently on the phone with this Chinese mafia as well. And we see that it's in Gotham and it's Penguin. That's just the reveal, is that he's running some extra country thing over in Africa, and it's something to do with I'm not even sure it says. I think it's still a mystery. I don't know. But it's Penguin. So I like it. One thing I do want to say is that I've finally gotten used to the very painterly style of the art. And I think the Marcus has really come into, I enjoyed this. I think that the art was very much working for it. It looked very good. So that's not really a point against it anymore. I like how it looks now. As for the plot of this one, it's setting up a good mystery. I mean, it's a world-hopping sort of thing. They went from Africa, Gotham, Beijing. It's this whole planetary political sort of thing. So I'm down with that. Penguin, okay, I guess. I feel like, I don't know. I kind of want Batwing to have his own rogues gallery, and he's just not. I mean, he had Massacre, but now with last issue being the Court of Owls tie-in and then this issue being Penguin, it just kind of feels like, okay, he's just going to steal from Batman for a little bit until we can figure out what to do with him. I don't know, it's whatever. And then just that one page where the dragon guy reveals himself, I don't know, the dialogue in that just felt like, "My name is Long. By the way, Long means dragon in Chinese." It's like, yeah, thank you. We needed that one spelled out. Thank you so much for that. So it's mostly just nitpicky. The rest of the issue's fine. I like the dialogue throughout it. It's definitely setting up a good mystery, and character-wise, everyone felt in their proper voices. So, yeah, overall, I'm going to give this a 7. I think it is decently well done. It's just docked in a couple weird points here or there, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing how this mystery evolves. Action Comics number 10, written by Grant Morrison, art by Rags Morales. This is pretty much a new arc. If you remember last time, we left off with a little cliffhanger of the little diminutive man who's been showing up constantly, hiring a man named Nimrod in order to kill Superman, because Nimrod's a mighty hunter. This is basically a one and done, just dealing with Nimrod. So we open up in Smallville with Nimrod's narration, basically introducing himself, what he does, what he did, and how everything, no matter what, leaves some sort of a track, and you just got to be smart enough to follow the track. So he goes into Smallville, the Kent farm specifically, and he's like talking to the current owner named Mr. Fry, and he's like, "So whatever happened to Clark? I mean, where'd he go?" And Mr. Fry's like, "I hear he got a job down in the paper in Metropolis. That's all I know." And then we see Nimrod just Googling Clark Kent, and it just comes up with a Wikipedia page for Clark Kent. Not very long, mind you, but still, it's there, which is weird enough. And then we just see how he killed a dinosaur. Just a single page of that. Anyway, into the main part of this story. I don't know when this part takes place. I feel like this may be an early, still in the early days of Superman, but it is just after the Justice League is made, and you'll see why. So we see a story that Clark wrote about some girl whose body was identified. She was only 12 years old, and Clark is on the phone with, I think, his editor or something like that, basically saying okay, or no, sorry, he was on the phone with that farmer because someone was calling for Clark, and we see that Clark is really angry for some reason. So he runs down the stairs, gets a Superman t-shirt from the dryer, I guess, and walks to the train station. And then we cut to this man who's feeding his pet hamsters. And he hears a knock on the door. He goes over, opens it up, and Clark's standing there, and he's like, hey, hello, sir. I know that you killed that girl. I am a reporter, and I would like to talk to you. And he's like, no, I'm going to close the door now. If you've got a problem with that, call the police. Click. And she's like, oh, I already did. So then he goes back over to his hamsters again, and then the door busts down, and there's Superman in a red t-shirt this time, and he grabs the dude by the face. He's like, I could burn your eyes out of your skull, but I ain't gonna do that. I'm gonna leave you for the police. And the guy's like, but who's gonna take care of my hamsters? So then Clark meets up with the Justice League, and they don't have a place to go quite yet. They're just meeting up in an old abandoned warehouse. And Clark brings along the hamsters, and he's like, hey, does anybody want to take care of these hamsters? To which no one does. But then he also brings up, apparently they were in mid-conversation of, why are we not doing things? Like, we are the Justice League. Why aren't we, like, going to the starving Saharan African countries and, like, giving them food and water? Why aren't we just like, why are we waiting for the big events instead of just helping people constantly? And everyone's just like, look, we can't just involve ourselves with like the politics and stuff like that. Like, we'll do the heroic things because that's what we're there for, but we can't make these decisions for people. And throughout this entire conversation, Clark just drops the fact that he knows everyone here's identities, including Batman. And Batman's like, yeah, well, I know you're a reporter too, so suck on that. And then Green Lantern gives Batman's... He doesn't straight up say Bruce Wayne. He says billionaire playboy, to which Green Lantern's like, so you're a billionaire, huh? And Bruce Wayne's like, shut up. You're not getting a dime. But anyway, Clark is kind of disillusioned with the Justice League at that point, but he's like, okay, I guess, whatever. Just call me when a space monster shows up. And he leaves. And then Batman's like, one of these days we're going to have to go after him. You guys know that, right? So then we cut over back to Metropolis. Clark is hanging out with Jimmy and Lois. And they're just looking through some of old scrapbooks and stuff like that. They're saying like, wow, Clark, you managed to get a date with a pretty hot redhead for prom. Whatever happened to that? And he's like, yeah, just grew apart or whatever. Lois, why do you have stuff in here that's before Superman's first appearance? Like, you have things in here from apparently the Blake Farm ghost stuff, which I don't know whether or not is actually Superman's. Like, it was actually Clark before he came out, but regardless, Lois put it in there as if it were Superman stuff. But anyway, they get out of the apartment. Clark thinks he sees someone staring at him for a second, and of course it's Nimrod, but then he gets distracted by Lois. And then we just go to something completely different, which I guess is setting up the next arc, of this truck going down the road in the rain. A dude standing in a cloak is standing in the middle of the road. He stops the truck with like some hypnotic powers, hops in the passenger seat, and he's like, I'm back on I've come home to this planet of my birth to assume control. Bring me to its leader. And the guy's like, I can take you to the mayor. And then they just drive off towards Metropolis. Doesn't come back. Future setup. Just keep that in the back of your mind. So then we cut to Jimmy, Lois, and Clark, who are all arriving at the Daily Star. And a guy's walking up there to the Daily Star, and everyone around is just freaking out. And they're like, what's going on here? And Lois is wondering where Superman is to deal with this. And Clark's like, oh, we don't need Superman. I know this guy. I've literally walked up there. And he walks up. And apparently this guy's name is Angus Grundig, who I guess they did stories about in the Daily Star, and they literally ruined his life. And so he's like, all right, you guys want news out of me? I'll give you news. And he opens up his shirt, and there's dynamite on it. He presses the button, and boom, explosion at the base of the Daily Star with Clark standing right next to them. So then we cut to some indeterminate time later, and Nimrod comes up and talks to Clark's landlord. And he's like, hey, I'm an old friend of Clark's, and I just swung into town. I really wanted to talk to him. Do you know where I can find him? And she's like, oh, Clark died. Yeah, no, there was an explosion. He made some enemies at the Daily Star, and yeah, he's dead. And Nimrod's like, that's impossible. He's Superman. He's not dead. How can he be dead? What? So he's just kind of like relishing over the fact of like, did someone kill him before I killed him? And he mutters out loud that Superman must be dead, to which point the landlady's like, oh, well, Superman's not dead. You can just ask Superman. And Superman's literally standing in the doorway about to grab the gun out of Nimrod's hand. And Nimrod's like, look, I don't care who you are, but if you're here, I can kill you. And he takes a shot at Superman. And Superman just heat visions the gun out of his hand while making snarky comments the whole time. And just basically takes out Nimrod, no problem. And so then the landlady's like, but what about Clark? Where's Clark? And he's like, I'm sorry, Clark Kent is dead. Which the landlady definitely knows a secret. That was established, so I don't know what he's doing here. But regardless, Superman says he'll explain everything later. And then we get one last shot in the epilogue of Nimrod. I assume Nimrod, he's actually just hooked up in this big iron mask thing, is being approached by that diminutive man again, saying like, ooh, I can give you an army against Superman, but you just have to make a deal with me. Mwahaha. That's where we leave off. Pretty much just a one-shot story, just really quickly done. Not bad in any particular sense, but it's not great either. It's just kind of like, okay, the story needed to get to a point where Clark Kent was dead, and we just decided to do this dude hunting Superman at the same time. Which, fine, I guess. Not great, not bad, just fine. Art's fantastic. And I do like the 2-page segment with the dude in the cloak, whatever the hell that was. Apparently his name was Adam. Just saying. That looked really good. Yeah, but no, it's just kind of a one and done just to get us to where we need to be for what I assume will be the next story. So overall, I give this a 7. Still good, still dense as hell because, it's Grant Morrison, but it's telling a story and I'm liking where it goes. And I like how Superman went up to the Justice League and was just like, hey, let's do more. And they're like, that's not really how we work. And he's like, all right, bye. That just speaks volumes to who this Superman is. So I'm definitely enjoying it. And 7 for this particular issue. Red Lanterns number 10, written by Peter Milligan, art by Miguel, Sepulveda. This technically picks up from Stormwatch number 9, so check that out if you haven't already. And I guess I'll just get this out of the way first. There's a framing device. It bookends the issue. It's very short. It's like 3 pages total, where Jack Moore, I believe his name was, is just getting the crap kicked out of him by all the Red Lanterns. Blee steps in, tears him apart, saying like, enough, we have to save our energy. And then goes to Jack and is just like, hey, I'm not going to be here to save you all the time. And he's like, well, we may not be here tomorrow anyway, so what are you even saying here? And she's like, hey, enough of that defeatist crap. Man up. Then the rest of the issue happens, and then in the back half, or at the very back few pages, they get to the Star Sapphire planet, which is where they were heading the whole time. Jack is once again about to get jumped by the other Red Lantern members, but he gets so pissed off that he makes a construct of a gun and just starts shooting people with it in the Red Lantern group. And when he's finally stopped, everyone's just looking at him like, yeah, man, respect. So then they all go down on the planet, and he's like, okay, but that didn't really feel like I was human. That felt like I was a monster. Maybe I am now totally Rancor. So, yeah, that's the framing device. Anyway, the issue as a whole follows Atrocitus and Dexstar, who are just making their way through the universe, looking for a business, and he's like, wait a minute, hold on. I feel a warped Red Lantern signature. Probably a business. He's a very warped guy. But it's right here in front of me, but I can't see anything. It must be hidden in a different, it must be hidden behind the fabric of space itself. So I'm going to get so angry, I'm going to burn space itself, which he does. Seems a bit over the top, but regardless, he breaks through space and ends up coming through a portal on the other side where he comes to Stormwatch HQ. Stormwatch, who just took in Scalox and has been dealing with his Red Lantern ring, they're doing tests on it and whatnot, trying to figure out what's going on with it. And then Martian Manhunter points out, something's beating up the outside of our ship. And we cut to Atrocitus, who's just tearing his way inside. And everyone's like, oh, geez. Oh, God. Okay, someone, Apollo, Midnighter, and Martian Manhunter, go fight that thing. We got to take him out before he destroys the ship. And we see Scalex's eye open up, and he's waking up as well. Atrocitus, meanwhile, breaks inside the ship. He scans to find out what's going on in here and where the Red Lantern energy is, to which a portal opens up right in front of him, and out comes Apollo, Midnighter, and Martian Manhunter, who immediately blast him with all they've got, and it still isn't enough. Like, Atrocitus just burns them and throws them through walls and whatnot, and he's just knocking them out and only getting stronger because they keep pissing him off. By the way, I love the way that Miguel Sepulveda does Atrocitus's look. Like, before this, he always had like this curved, like sort of, it didn't feel like he was that threatening. Here he looks just terrifying, and I love it. So they engineer and whatever the name of the dude who can talk to cities is, I'm never going to remember that. They're trying to get the ship to basically stay alive while Atrocitus is literally tearing it apart, and the rest of the team is still fighting up after them. But then they see that Midnighter has disappeared. He's not with the team anymore. And it turns out that he saw Dexstar, like, out of the corner of his eye. So he's now in a one-on-one fight with a cat. Dexstar lunges after him. Midnighter punches Dexstar in the face and then just grabs him by the scruff of the neck and says, like, "This is Midnighter. I've punched a cat." I love it. It is a perfect panel. Mwah. So Atrocitus is beating up Apollo, Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter tries to connect to him telepathically in order to let him know, like, hey, we don't know what in the hell an abysmus is, dude, so chill. And as he connects telepathically, he sees all of Atrocitus' history and rage and whatnot. The Manhunters came in, blew up his planet, killed all of his family, and now he's angry at the Guardians and angry at the Green Lanterns because they work for the Guardians. And then Abysmus poisoned their Red Lantern battery, and then he throws off Martian Manhunter. And Manhunter doesn't quite take that well. Like, he's having a couple like waking nightmares because of all that crap that just happened. But he realizes, like, okay, hold on. Maybe you're not with Abysmus, but there's definitely a power ring here. Do you have one of my lanterns captive? And we see at that point the Red Lantern ring breaks out of stasis, goes back over to Scalix, to which Scalix then busts through one of the walls to Atrocitus, and he's like, "I will have my revenge. You've taken my hand. How dare you?" So then everybody just kind of like separates out. Engineer throws up a doorway. Scalix just jumps right through it without thinking. And then Engineer just talks to Atrocitus and is just like, "Look, you're free to go. We don't have your guys. We're not going to hurt you. You are clearly too low on energy to fight us. Just go our separate ways. This crossover is done." And Atrocitus is like, "Fair enough. But one day I will have my energy and I will be back and I will have my vengeance." And he leaves. And Apollo's like, shouldn't we have killed him? Like, I'm pretty sure that he's a super threat. And Engineer's like, "Look, based off of what John is saying, he's going to die. Like, he's definitely not got any energy left to do any of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I'm not that worried about him." So then we see 3 light years across the galaxy. Atrocitus and Scalix are talking. Dexter's just thrown through the portal afterwards. And he's like, "Yeah, that fight really shouldn't have happened. We wasted energy that we did not have. Oh, well, regardless, we will make our way now to find Abysmus for reals." And then we see the people of Stormwatch are analyzing what the ship managed to pick up about Atrocitus, and they're like, "Okay, here's the thing. Yes, we almost lost, but now we can analyze it and possibly crack how to defeat them and eradicate them along with all the other Lantern Corps if they ever become a big enough threat." And then the ending bit, like I said, of Rancor and whatnot. So that's it. I like it. I really like the art. I cannot overstate how much Miguel Sepulveda was made to draw Atrocitus. Like, it's such a it makes it, this entire core especially, but it's like Atrocitus is just so much scarier. Plot wise, it was just the thing. They're both the writer artists on both books. Like, yes, this crossover was bound to happen. It was written as soon as they were given the job of both these books at the same time. Do I think it was necessary? No, but it had enough setup. It set it itself up well enough of, okay, Stormwatch deals with alien threats against Earth. Red Lantern came to Earth. Like, over both books, it was set up well, and it felt like it made sense from a story perspective. That being said, I feel like it kind of wrapped up a bit too quick. I feel like Engineer just coming and being like, okay, crossover done, goodbye, just seemed a bit too easy. But overall, I'm going to give this one a 7.5. If only, you know what? I'll give it an 8. And the extra 0.5 there is specifically for the page where Midnighter punches Dexstar. Not because I approve of the cat being punched in the face, but just because it is such a funny, perfectly written scene. So, 8 for this. Give me more. Earth 2, number 2, written by James Robinson, art by Nicola Scott. Last issue we left off with the god Mercury crashing down in front of Jay Garrick and saying, "Hey, I'm dying, I need your help." This issue picks up with a completely separate plot of Mr. Terrific after the events of Mr. Terrific number 8 coming through a portal and arriving on Earth 2. And he's like, "Where am I? I'm still on Earth. It's not my Earth." Okay, noted. And he looks around and he sees like, it's been the 5-year anniversary of Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman sacrificing themselves. So they got a whole thing going on. And he just looks around for a second before a man approaches him saying, "Excuse me, Mr. Holt." And he's like, "I don't know him, Mr. Holt." "Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Terrific. Yeah, hey, I've been expecting you." And Mr. Terrific's like, how could you possibly be expecting me? I just got here a second ago in, is this Manhattan? I feel like it's Manhattan. And they're like, "Yes, hi. My name is Terry Sloan. I'm the smartest man on Earth. And you are a threat to my goals if I leave you here. So I'm going to have to take you out before you can use your science powers against me." And Mr. Terrific is immediately like, "Dude, I don't even know you, but bring it, bitch." So he launches his T-spheres at Terry, and Terry unloads a airborne nanite virus, which turns his T-spheres against him. And that's the end of that plot for this issue. Just know that happened. So then we go back to the Jay Garrick part, and we see him talking to the god Mercury. And honestly, my only critique is this goes on for 3 pages, and it literally does not, like, say anything, where all it is Jay Garrick saying, like, "Oh my god, you're god Mercury." And he's like, "Yes, and all of the gods are dead, except for me, and I'm dying." And he's like, "I have to get you help." "I'm dying, but I can call for help." "Yeah, but I'm dying, so let's just move on." And basically Mercury tells him, like, "Look, I have been taken captive by something. I've been stuck there. That's what's been going on the past 5 years. It's this big dark thing. It's not Apocalypse. It's not Darkseid, so you don't got to worry about that, but it is big and bad. And it's going to take a whole lot of heroes." And Jay Garrick's like, "All the heroes are dead. And we call them wonders on our planet. Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman were the trinity of wonders." And Mercury's like, "Yeah, okay, you're going to be a hero." And he's like, "Me? I'm not saying anything special." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to make you special." And he zaps him with some electricity that turns him, basically gives him the outfit of Mercury. It gives him like the helmet, but like it's also weird because it has a visor. It's Flash. I'm not going to, they don't name it, but it is, you know it. So at that point, the World Army shows up and shines a spotlight over the crater where they're both standing at. And Jay Garrick's like, "Oh, cool, it's the World Army. Hey, we can get you help now." And Mercury's like, "Yeah, no, I'm still dying. I really can't overstate that enough. But also don't trust anybody because this dark thing could be literally anybody. So run, Jay, run." And he runs off away from the World Army. So then we cut back to Alan Scott, who's just landing in his private jet in Hong Kong. And he's just making some small talk with the guy who's like welcoming him. And he's like, "Ah, yes, I have quite a few things I'd like to do here." And he's like, "Oh, yes, of course, Mr. Scott, whatever. But just so you know, your friend is here." And Alan Scott's like, Sam's here?" And we look over and see this very suave, like young Mario Lopez looking guy. And Alan walks over to him, gives him a big old smooch, and apparently they're lovers. So that's a thing. And Sam tells him like, or Alan's like, "Oh, yes, we'll make our way to the penthouse immediately." And Sam's like, No. I have a better plan. It's this nice little place totally out of the way. We can get there via just a couple of hours in bullet train." And Alan's like, "All right, sounds good to me. Let's go." So they hop on their way there. We see Jay is now walking his way down the streets, and he's like, "I don't understand why I just ran from the World Army and made things so much worse for myself. But I do now have powers, so let's see what happens." So apparently when he thinks about it, the suit can come on and come off. Like it's just a thought-based thing. So he thinks about it, the suit comes on, and he starts running. And he's not paying any attention to where he's going, so there's just a dead end with a huge wall in the way. He can't stop fast enough, so he finds out he can literally run up walls. and he's able to do like parkour on all the rooftops, no problem. He's like, all right, sick, power suits, awesome. But then he hears a couple crying out for help nearby, and apparently during the invasion of Apocalypse, they had an infestation of what they call apocarats, which are just rats from Apocalypse, and they're attacking this couple. So then Jay jumps down, he grabs a trash can, and he super speeds around, picks up all the apocarats, and traps them in there. And he's like, oh, well, you okay? And he said, don't worry, I'll have this done in a flash. Which then, as he speeds away, making sure the couple's all right, he's like, they're like, did he give his name? He's like, well, no, he was modulating his voice too much, but I did think I hear him say something about, and then we cut away. It's fantastic. So then, anyway, Flash is running and running and running, but he's like testing to see how fast he can go, and by the time he realizes that he needs to stop, he makes this huge pit crater in this field. And he as he comes across somebody, they speak in a foreign language. He's like, excuse me, where am I? And the guy just runs away screaming, parademon, parademon. And he's like, oh, okay, that's not good. But then he's welcomed by a voice who says, you're in Poland. What took you so long? As, for lack of a better term, Hawk Girl. She doesn't give her exact name as Hawk Girl, but it is actually Hawk Girl. Descends from the heavens and says, sure took your time getting here. So we cut back to Alan, Scott, and Samuel. They're on the bullet train, and they're just talking like, hey, look, Samuel, I know you have a lot of business here in China, considering that's where your business is located, but how about you relocate to America so you can be closer to me? And he's like, what are you saying, Alan? And Alan pulls out a ring and is like, Samuel, will you marry me? And right as soon as he's saying that, for no obvious reason whatsoever, the bullet train explodes and just starts plummeting off this bridge. And in one of the windows, there's a green light. We don't get to that yet, but there you go. So I like it. I think it's doing a good job of setting up not only a couple of mysteries of like, okay, what's up with the Hawk Girl thing? What's up with the Mr. Terrific thing? But it's also just taking its time to develop, I believe, are probably going to be its core characters of Jay Garrick and Alan Scott. It gave Jay an issue to like test out his powers. It's going to give Alan an issue or two before he finally becomes who he's meant to be. But then it also introduced the mystery of, okay, what's Terry Sloan doing? Mr. Terrific just showed up. Who the hell is Hawk Girl in this world? Like, it's got its own stuff going on. So overall, I'm liking the way that it's going. I thought that it being set on an alternate Earth would make it feel less important to me, but it still feels like it, because it set up such a massive tragedy in its past, and it's still just working through that. I feel that it does have a good place to be, especially because it's saying that this world is a world without any sort of superheroes. And these are the first ones popping up after the Trinity died all those years ago. So I'm interested. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how it turns out from there. Overall, I give this issue I'll give it an 8. I think it was my thing that's drawing it back significantly, though, from any higher is just the fact that it took 3 pages of like, I can get you help, Mercury. No, dude, you can't. I'm dying. But I can. Ugh. Green Arrow number 10, written by Nocenti, art by Steve Kurth. This is a totally new arc. Like, doesn't even connect to the old one. I'm not even going to bother trying to explain the last one. So we open up with a woman named Pauline Pearl driving on a motorcycle, just saying how much she loves the open road and going on these cars and whatnot. And then she takes this motorcycle and launches herself off a bridge, to which Green Arrow then fires an arrow that he swings from and grabs her like just a second before she plummets to her death. And as he rescues Pauline, Green Arrow's like, hey, are you okay? And she's like, no, come on, man. And it turns out Pauline was suicidal. Pauline wanted to die. And she's like, that was the first time I've been able to work up the guts to do that. How dare you stop me? And she starts punching a wall and blood starts coming out of her knuckles. And Green Arrow's like, hey. It's not about the guts to do suicide. It takes a lot more guts to live. And she's like, wow, great fortune cookie there. Look, it doesn't matter because I'm not a human. I'm a robot. There's nothing wrong with a robot wanting to kill itself, right? And Green Arrow's immediately caught off guard. Like, Green Arrow, like, robots don't have free will. Therefore, you wanting to kill yourself makes you not a robot. And she's like, well, why don't you just go work at the suicide hotline? I'm sure you'd have a 100% success rate. God, I hate you. And she tries to like claw back her own skin to show that she has circuitry underneath. And Green Arrow just like stops her as she starts bashing her head against this wall. And as she finally passes out, she's like, let me die. And then Green Arrow gets her to some, I assume, private like hospital or something like that. And they run some scans on her and find out that, her name is Pauline Pearl, I believe it was, and that she has a barcode on her right foot that says necrotics. That's it, necrotics. So when they do a scan of her, she has like a thin metal plate in the back of her skull, as well as like skeletal veins and limbs and implants and stuff like that all throughout her body. And she's like, the doctor's like, I've never seen anything like this before, like ever. And she's like, well, she didn't do it to herself, so we got to figure out what's going on. So finally they get her juvie records out, and they have an address for her, as well as an address for necrotics. And at that point she wakes up and just shares this memory she had of her past of like, when I was young, I was the fastest kid on the block, and I could do a wheelie for like city blocks, and I had this motorcycle, and I could jump over a bus. I was so cool as a kid. And then she just is real sad for a while as she's thinking about these memories. So then we have Green Arrow, but specifically Oliver Queen, but specifically just some vague businessman type, like he doesn't name himself, just go to necrotics. And this dude comes out dressed like the mutants from Dark Knight Returns, and he's like, can I help you? And he's like, yeah, you sold my buddy some product, and he was very pleased. I'd like to get one as well. And he's like, oh, step on in. And he just does this whole showroom routine of like, we have ones that will cook you any meal you want, ones that can play you any song you want. You want one to do your taxes? He's right here. He comes with his own cubicle. And then there's this big War Machine one that's definitely going to come into the fight scene later, but we're not talking about that yet. And so he's doing this whole pitch here of like how robots can do whatever. And he's like, Oliver's very impressed by it, and like, wow, they are very good at their jobs. Like the one who's playing music is like perfect. And he's like, all right, well, I'll take the whole lot. And he's like, that's going to cost you millions of dollars. He's like, yeah, I'll be back in an hour to pick them up. So then Oliver takes the trip over to Pauline's parents' house, and it turns out they're actually her adoptive parents. And when she was a kid, she had like a whole lot of physical deformities. She wasn't like standing right. She always was getting surgeries in order to get fixed or whatever. And then one day they told her that she was adopted, and she didn't know that, and it didn't go well. And she like was just confused about who she was, where she came from, and eventually she just ran away. So then we cut to the back area of that robot salesman guy, and we see it's this whole huge like warehouse room filled with a bunch of robots, humanoid robots that are all like in various forms of disrepair. And he's just bad-mouthing them constantly. He's like, what are you looking at? I'm not your mom. Go find a hobby. Jesus. And can we please clean up our parts around here? Y'all are slobs. And so he just makes his way through the warehouse. Finally, on the other end, Green Arrow's standing there, and he's like, all right, tell me what's going on here. And they basically just have a morality battle for a second, where Green Arrow's like, these guys are obviously humans. And he's like, no, they're not. They are robots. Would you fight for the rights of a toaster? These things are just machines. No matter how humanoid they look, they are just machines. And he's like, right, but like, I found Pauline Pearl's parents, so they were once human. And he's like, don't know what you're talking about. He's lying. Kill him. And so he sicks all the robots on him. And eventually the big War Machine robot comes out. They get into a fight. But this guy is so ridiculously huge that Oliver doubts that he actually was a human to begin with. So he shoots a couple arrows into him, and then tries a like electrified current thing in order to see if a current, like, I don't know, they explain it as a toaster in a bathtub, and apparently that would only hurt humans and it wouldn't hurt robots. which then verifies to Green Arrow when it doesn't hurt him that he is 100% robot. So then Green Arrow just fires a normal electrical arrow at him and takes him out like normally, which I don't understand why one worked and the other one didn't. But regardless, he takes him out. And then we see Pauline has managed to sneak up behind the robot salesman guy and puts a piano wire around his neck and just starts strangling him. To which this guy then goes on possibly the longest diatribe of this book as a whole, which if you remember my issue 1 ramblings, that's saying something. And he goes in to how he was originally a psychiatrist and he had all these people telling him all these problems, and it was always coming down to the fact of they just felt bad things. And he wanted to use his ability, technologically I guess, to make it so people didn't have to experience bad things. So he took this chip and put it in people's brains, and they didn't feel bad things anymore. And they thought they were robots, I guess. And apparently there are thousands of them. To which Green Arrow was like, what? Are you kidding me? And he's like, yeah, they're just out there. These people in here, they're only in here for repairs. Like, they're just people who are broken. And so Green Arrow leaves with Pauline and basically just opens up the door to everyone saying, like, here's the thing. You guys were humans. You guys still are humans. This is the world. You belong out there. You can get your fix out there. You don't have to come to this guy. Just be humans. It's up to you if you want to come with. And we don't actually see who all comes with. It's just left up to the reader, I guess. Pauline is given the info dump on her past and how it turns out that part of the operation to get this done, you have to have your memory wiped. So she had these memories that were all false memories of her being like the fastest kid and loving the open road and whatnot. Her dad had a motorcycle and she was just sitting on her dad's lap. Like, that's all it was. So these last 2 pages are so hard to explain. She runs off, she drops her bag, and inside were a bunch of like repair parts or something like that, to which Green Arrow is surprised that she has repair parts, despite the fact that we know she was like at least a little robotic. So I don't understand what the surprise was. And then there's a final page of Robots Anonymous, where a bunch of people are all talking to each other. I'm just going to recount this exact dialogue here. What's your favorite object? I have to say gears, any size, any shape, with or without lube. To which the person replies, for me it's always will be, the elegance of a corkscrew, with its twisty little pigtail that always gets where it needs to go. Just, you need to have that in your brain now, because I have it in my brain. So anyway, we just see all these people who are just like partially robotic or maybe just wear metal, because one guy steps up into Robots Anonymous and he talks to this dude with his big iron jaw. Iron Jaw's like, oh, what are your mods? And he's like, oh, I don't have any yet. I just like the way that metal feels and I wear it sometimes. And he's like, yeah, a lot of us got our start that way too. Come on into the meeting. So are they robots? I don't even know what's going on here. I gotta say, I like the writing in this more than I've liked the past like 4 or 5 issues of this book, but it's still just like, what the hell is going on for part of it? Like, I feel like Nocenti knows exactly what she's writing down, and she feels like she's overwriting it. So then she just takes out huge swaths of very important details and leaves it up to the reader to figure out what's going on, which I have no clue. Are they all robots? Are they not? This one made the most sense out of the past 4 issues, but it's still like very much this is the definition of ambiguous ending, because it ended ambiguously 3 times in a row of, do the robots come with? Is she actually a robot? Are any of them robots? Who knows? But overall, I can't complain that much about it. Different artists, love that. So I'm going to give this one a 6. It's good. It's fine. It makes some good points on like humanity versus robots and stuff like that. Just not quite there for me. I'm looking for a little bit more, and I'm hoping that maybe if we're on an upward trend here, it can deliver, but I am not holding my breath. Justice League International number 10, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Aaron Lopresti. Technically, this picks up from Fury of Firestorm issue 9, so check that out if you haven't, but it can be read without it. So We open up with the team currently, which is Batman, Booster, Godiva, Batwing, Guy Gardner, OMAC, and August General, making their way back to the United States. And they land right next to the Statue of Liberty. And basically they're like, okay, so that last issue was a total waste of our time, which is why I say you can avoid it. So they're kind of all iffy about each other right now. OMAC just wants to get back to good. Guy Gardner wants to get back to ice. Like, you know, everyone's going their own little separate ways shortly. And Guy specifically flies off. We then cut to somewhere in Brooklyn where a dude is running back into his home. And his name is Malik. And he goes and he talks to his brother Malcolm, who is the Lightweaver guy who attacked them like 2 issues ago. And he's like, what do you do? Are you turned into a life of crime? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. How's your job hunt going on? And what about your house that's about to be foreclosed on? And he's like, don't give me that. And Lightweaver's like, dude, the system sucks. Everything about it sucks. Let's just burn the system to the ground. That's what I'm doing. And so he flies off, and Malik's like, that's a bad idea. And then we're done with that. Then we cut to Guy who's talking to Ice in the hospital, and he's just like, hey, babe, look, I know I'm not really, like, you're not my babe anymore, but, like, I'm here in case you need me. I'm not going anywhere, so hope that counts. Just trying to get in her good graces again. Then we have David Zavimbe, a.k.a. Batwing, go into Vixen's room. She's actually awake. And they talk briefly, and I'm not sure that Vixen knows that David is Batwing, because he just says how he's in town for business, police stuff. But he basically breaks the news to her like, hey, by the way, you might be paraplegic, which she's like, yeah, the doctor just said that. And he's like, right. Also, they are disbanding Justice League International. She's like, no, they can't. They have to keep going. If I can't be part of the team, someone must take my place. Wink, wink. And then we see Booster and Godiva in Fire's room. And they're like, she's slipping into a coma. And the longer that goes on, the worse it gets. So and Booster's like, I can't help but feel like it's all my fault. And Godiva's like, it's not your fault. You didn't set the bomb. You have to move on. And they like nearly kiss. And then they break away. But like, well, that's awkward. So then we meet OMAC and August General. August General, who has been narrating a lot of this issue. They're up on top of a roof, and OMAC's basically like, dude, I need to change back into a person. Let me talk to Batman so I can do that. And August General's like, whoa, hold on. Maybe there's not a way you can. Maybe you should be like coming to terms with your new situation. When I came to terms with my situation of how I look, I realized how much I was able to do for my country. And OMAC's like, yeah, that's great for your country, but what about you? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? And August General's like, and OMAC's like, yeah, exactly. So then Batman shows up, but before they can even say anything, he's just like, all right, everyone, we got a tracking satellite thing that saw Lightweaver's signal light up. So we're going to go get them. Let's get the team together and go. So then we go to Washington, where the team, which they reveal themselves named as Burners later on because they burn down the system, they're seeing all these protests outside the Capitol building that have things like fair share and no more wealthy elites. Topical. So basically, this is a breakdown. He's in charge, and he's like, look, these people, they're just puppets to a system of the ruling class. We're going to tear down that system and give them back their freedom. And they basically are just going to do the Fight Club method, where they're literally just going to burn it to the ground and everyone starts at zero again. So there's that. Lightweaver shows up and he's like, all right, yep, I'm definitely in on this, guys. I do not have my doubts. And he makes this giant like kaiju thing out of solid light, and everyone's like, all right, this should do it. Let's march on down to Washington. And as soon as they get out of the warehouse that they were hiding in, Guy Gardner is there with his own Green Lantern construct of a giant guy, and he just punches the kaiju in the face. And then just a battle starts. And I don't remember half of these people's names. There's Intersect, Lightweaver, and Breakdown. And then there's like a techno one who's just like a kid. I don't know his name. They don't say his name. But he's here. So regardless, he's fighting August General. It's just bouncing off of him. And Breakdown's like, nobody panic, just fight them. And so they all get into a fight. And literally, the Justice League has the upper hand the entire time. Like, they are about to knock out everybody except for, like, Intersect. And because of that, Breakdown, as soon as he's down on the ground, he's like, hey, Intersect, do the thing. And so Intersect goes up in the sky away from all of them. And she's apparently able to intercept any signal and change it to her own will. So she changes the signal between Guy Gardner and his power ring, and she changes the signal between Booster and his, like, gloves that shoot energy blasts, and he makes it so they both start firing on their own teammates, and then they fire on each other, thus effectively knocking out the entirety of the Justice League, like, no problem. Which seems a bit OP to me, especially because Breakdown's whole power is he can turn stuff into nothing. He can just dust it away. Somehow Intersect's the powerful one. Regardless, they're like, all right, cool, should we kill him? And Breakdown's like, no, we're going to go down to Washington, and we're going to hold up these so-called heroes, the people who are protecting the system, and we're going to kill them on the Capitol steps. And that's where they leave off. So, there's an issue in writing of, you need to make the bad guys sympathetic, meaning that you can understand why they feel the way they do. Which, yes, I get it. I think anybody alive today understands why these villains feel the way they do. Whether or not you agree that they are going about solving those issues in the right way is completely separate. But I think that we all agree we know how they feel the way they do. The issues then arise when you agree with their point of view more than the heroes. And considering the heroes don't really have a point of view right now, like, what have these guys done? Breakdown has killed like 3 people. Totally, yes, no, take him away. What have the other ones actually done that the Justice League is fighting them? Not much. Like, the Lightweaver attacked the Justice League, but it's never been like a crime against humanity or anything like that. They haven't done anything. They're just like, the other 3 are just like protesting. So it's kind of a weird spot. But no, I like this. I'm down with this story arc. I do think that they're kind of putting in too much effort to explaining why we're changing the team members. Like, they're like, no, Batwing, you have to join in Vixen's place because it's her wish for you to do so. And it's like, he can just join. Like, we don't have to go through this explanation of why OMAC is sticking with the team because he wants Batman's help. Like, he can just join. We don't have to go through this whole rigmarole. I understand for character development's sake, but, like, the first characters just joined. We don't have to. They could just do it because they believe in good. We don't have to go through a whole thing. Regardless, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 7. Just standard issue, pretty good. Nothing too much wrong with it, but nothing too great about it either. The only thing is, like, they got to make sure these villains are a lot more villainous moving forward, because otherwise I'm probably going to side with the villains side of things before too long. World's Finest number 2, written by Paul Levitz, art by George Perez and Kevin Maguire. Last issue left off with the dynamic duo fighting against some radiation thing named Haku, and this just is exactly the same fight. So Karen, Power Girl, is fighting against Haku and is quite literally destroying the entire lab in order to do it. Like, she's just ripping off random tubes from the wall and throwing it at him. And Huntress is like, hey, maybe don't do that. And she's like, they already destroyed my quantum tunneling generator. I'm just bringing this place down. I'm pissed. So, but no matter what they throw at Haku, it's not doing anything to him. Helena gets up and, like, blinds him for just a second, long enough for Power Girl to get up in his face and throw a solid punch. But as it connects, it, like, literally causes her pain. Not, like, more so than anything else she's felt since she fought with Darkseid and whatever. So it's causing her, like, it's shocking her, doing whatever. Helena fires a crossbow at Haku, and it lands, like, in his ear, to which he finally has to drop Power Girl and stumbles through a wall away. And Huntress wakes up Power Girl, gets her awake, and it's just like, hey, okay, yeah, he just kind of left. Why were you hurt by him? And Power Girl's like, I don't know. It's like, well, he has radiation. Maybe part of that radiation is, like, kryptonite or something. And he's like, I don't know. Regardless, let's go find him. So they fly off. Then we get some more flashbacks. So 5 years ago, Karen's trying to burn her Supergirl costume in order to just, put away the past, move on, but she's literally not able to. It's literally not burning. So she's like, maybe that's a sign that we need to go back. And Huntress just tells her, like, no, there is no back. They are dead. They died. Like, yes, our world may still be there, but everything that we cared about is gone. We need to start a new life here. And then 58 months ago, so I guess 2 months after that, they're just finding out more and more differences, things that are just a little bit changed. They're in Paris, and they see how the Justice League on this planet did manage to fight back the dark side that showed up. And they realize, like, yeah, that's definitely the same dark side. So if he's able to get through between our planets, between the planet we're on and the planet we came from, we are able to get through as well. We just need to figure out how. So also Huntress was just saying how she has some sort of indestructible fabric that she got. It may be from Apocalypse. She's not sure, but she's got it regardless. So then we cut to a few weeks ago in Micronesia, where Karen's already running her own business. People are asking her a whole bunch of questions on, like, oh, what do you want to do? Time Magazine is here for an interview, and this other person's asking about whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And so she just very quickly, rapid fire answers all the questions. And then turns out she needs to get some more rare earth metals in order to get a prototype or something working that may be able to bring her back to her planet. So she just hops on, puts on a bathing suit, jumps down in the water outside of her company, and uses her X-ray vision to find some rare earth metals in the lower oceanic crust. And so she just picks up this giant boulder, brings it back up to the surface, and sets it in front of her assistant. The assistant calls up somebody like, yeah, the rare earth metal people dropped off something on the dock. You might want to come get that with a truck. And then apparently this takes place at pretty much the exact same time as the Huntress miniseries, because the assistant says, by the way, your friend is having some trouble getting out of Italy. Maybe you should go help her. So the Huntress miniseries happens. And then we see you cut back to now. Power Girl's flying Huntress, and they're just basically tracking the path of where this person came from. Now remember, they're in Japan, so Huntress is thinking maybe it has something to do with, like, the Fukushima thing or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but as they move along, they can see that there's this huge, like, there's a bunch of floating rocks just up in the sky, all held up with the radiation. So they know they're headed in the right direction. And Power Girl makes sure to give Huntress a hard time by, like, doing a whole bunch of zigzags and crazy loop-de-loops throughout the rocks, which is, while she's holding Huntress, is just giving her a hard time. Then we cut over to Gotham City for a one-page cutaway that I genuinely don't know what happened. It's the Gotham Bank, and this banker just looks at his screen and sees that there are 3 all rapid-fire withdrawals from an account that transferred out $387,000 each, and then they just stop and disappear. And he just goes, huh, that's weird. I don't know what that was. I'm sure we'll get to it, but it was weird. So anyway, the Power Girl uses her X-ray vision to see that Haku is inside, and he's, like, feeding on some radiation and stuff like that inside. So they can't get too close because, it is a heavy radiation area. So Huntress keeps her distance and fires off some crossbow shots to draw Haku out. And I say keeps her distance. It's like 10 feet, which I feel like the radiation would still get to her, but regardless, Haku's pissed off. He's like, you managed to hurt me. You won't hurt me again. And as he's about to lay into Huntress, Power Girl just comes down from the ceiling and knocks him down a few floors. And she starts wailing on him, but then he catches one of her punches and just does a massive radiation burst, which, of course, knocks her on her ass. And she falls down and is pretty much well injured. And at that point, Haku turns to Huntress and is just like, when they entomb the remains of this power plant, they can bury your corpse with it. And Huntress goes, over my dead body. And he's like, yeah, that's the plan, as he seemingly either goes, like, hypercritical or he starts growing. It's kind of hard to tell. But that's where we leave the issue. I'm thinking that this first arc's probably just going to be filled with those flashbacks, which I don't mind so much, but I do want a better sequence. Like, it's really hard for me to keep track of what happened 5 years ago, what happened a few weeks ago. Like, I gather the gist of, like, okay, this thing happened when they first got here, and this thing happened pretty much when the story happened. But I'm assuming that there's going to be some middling stuff, later issues that are like, 30 months ago and stuff like that. And that's where it's going to be really hard to keep track of, okay, what's already happened and what hasn't. If they were going to be doing this flashback, I'd much rather they would have kept it in strict chronological order of 60 months ago, 50 months ago, 40, 30, and then a few weeks ago would have shown up in like the last issue of the arc. But now that they're going out of order, I don't know. It feels like it's just going to be a bit difficult to keep track of. But that's possibly a complaint for a future issue. It's just something that kind of scared me with this one because I'm not able to keep track of 60 months worth of events in my head. So yeah, it's good. It's fine. Art's a little bit shaky. It's not my preferred style. I think the flashback parts are actually better than the main series part. For the most part, I would say. There's some issues to it still. I think Kevin Maguire does the flashbacks, whereas the main story is done by George Perez. But they both have a very different style to them, and both have their pros and cons. So overall, it's just a middling issue. I would say I give it a 6.5, and that probably sounds a little bit harsh comparatively, but it just feels right. So yeah, it's not blowing me away, and I hope that it can get to something that actually feels like it matters a little bit sooner than later. GI Combat number 2, written by J.T. Krul, art by Ariel Olivetti. We are handling just the part of the war that time forgot, in which last issue our U.S. Special Forces team stumbled across North Korean army fighting dinosaurs. And this issue picks up in Before, where our main character, I believe his name is Stevens, is cuddling up with his wife, and the wife is like, hey, can I ask a question? How do you kill people? And she's like, well, I don't enjoy it. And he's like, yeah, but like, how do you just get in that mindset? And he's like, it's just training. Like, whenever I kill, it's because it's the only thing keeping me from coming back home to you. Aw. So then we cut back to North Korean dinosaur fight. And basically the entire issue just revolves around our two main characters just escaping the fight. And they keep on like trying to make their way just through this valley. As they do so, they're approached by North Koreans who are then attacked by a Stegosaurus and a bunch of other dinosaurs, raptors and whatnot. And one of them gets, I'm not remembering his name. There's Stevens, and then I think it's Elliot is the other one. So Elliot's bitten on the shoulder by like a raptor or something, but it doesn't leave that much of a mark. It mostly hits his armor. But yeah, then they come across a North Korean soldier who jumps out of his tank because it is being attacked by a T-Rex, and he runs right towards Stevens and Elliot, who are like, why are you coming towards us? Son of a bitch. So they start unloading on the T-Rex. Elliot pulls out 2 grenades, throws it into the T-Rex's mouth, and it just explodes around his neck. This book is really gruesome, by the way. I want to make that clear. So the T-Rex is completely destroyed, and Elliot's just like, I am man. Look upon my might and tremble. And Stevens is like, hey, buddy. Hey, we're still in the middle of this. I need you to not, get into your macho mindset right now, okay? Can you do that? Cool, great. So they realize that he's like making sure that he's good, that he's not gonna do that stuff again. And then they turn around and they see a North Korean soldier shouting "run" as he's running through the woods. They like take him down, and they're just like, all right, hey, what's going on? And they all speak North Korean, so there's that. And the soldier basically tells them, look, we don't know what's going on. We were sent out here to investigate the electrical storm, and when we got here, there were dinosaurs. And so immediately Stevens is like, okay, well, that's kind of what happened to us. So now that we know the electrical storm is probably what brought the dinosaurs here. And then Elliot points out, or brought us back to the dinosaurs. We could be back in their time. And Stevens is like, no. We're not thinking like that. We're going home. We are going home. So they make their way through, and they're like, all right, North Korean soldier guy, maybe you'll get a name later. I'm giving you a gun because right now it's not us versus you. It is all of us versus them. So we're going to need all the help we can get. And as he's saying this, they are being stalked by some feathery-looking raptor thing. So, yeah, short and sweet, to the point. It's fine. Like, the art is probably the selling point on this book right now. It's all done in this watercolor sort of very fine detailed look, to the point where I feel like some of it is computer generated graphics, but it still has that watercolor look, so maybe it's not. Hard to tell. But that's probably the selling point. Writing wise, I mean, what have we really gotten so far? It's just escape from the dinos, which I feel like a lot of these war stories are just escape from the... It's the Black Hawk Down in every comic. But regardless, it's okay. I will give it a... See, it's so short. I feel bad giving it a low score because it just didn't have time to do its own thing. But 6.5 is honestly as high as I can really feel like I go. Not much is happening. And the fact that I couldn't remember the names of the characters, I had to leaf through the entirety of the series just to find the speech bubble where they said the names. So that's an issue as well. But 6.5 in that, it's fine. It's okay. It has its flaws, though. And the art is honestly the main selling point of it. Stormwatch number 10, written by Peter Milligan, art by Miguel Sepulveda. Last issue was a whole Red Lantern thing that ended up being resolved in Red Lanterns number 10. This issue is its own totally separate thing. And we open up with Engineer looking out over Earth, just being like, okay, so Stormwatch protected the planet from alien threats, which was pretty black and white on terms of how to deal with that. But now we've got like superheroes, which are making things a lot more complicated on what counts as a threat. Also, why are so many of them in America? That's just the thing. And so she's trying to get more information, so she sends down Stormwatch to just observe the heroes down there. And we get I'm always blanking on his name, Hawksmoor. He's in Gotham, and he's went to like the oldest part of the city, and he's asking the city, hey, what's the deal with Batman? But apparently the city can't stop talking about owls, because it's just been owls nonstop in Gotham. So, yeah, not getting much there. Meanwhile, John Jones goes to Mumbai, India, to which apparently there is a woman who's reputed to have the destructive power of the goddess Kali. I'm not entirely sure who they're talking about there. I don't know. So then we see Apollo and Midnighter in Metropolis. They're getting glimpses of Superman. And Engineer tells him, please get the secret identity of Superman. And Apollo's kind of pissed off by this. He's like, man, all these secrets. I hate these damn secrets. And Midnighter's like, hey, you get kind of used to him. He's like, oh, you get kind of used to him. Screw you, Midnighter. Midnighter's like, what the hell is your problem? And Engineer's like, hey, guys. And he's like, not a good time. He's like, no, I've changed the plans. You got to go to France. So then we cut over to France, where there's an archaeological dig going on 2 hours earlier. And this archaeological group manages to find this strange technological device that's buried in the earth. And the main guy at the digs it up, and he starts analyzing it. And he's like, this is all the dirt and stuff on this is dated correctly. This is a genuine, anachronism of what in the hell this thing is doing here. And he accidentally presses a button on the side of it, which causes some electricity to attack his brain. And then Engineer tells us, okay, here's what happened in that last scene. They dug up a thing called a Freno module. Used to belong to Stormwatch. We had a couple hundred of them, and one of them became unaccounted for, and somehow they found it. So we got to go stop this guy. And he's like, what do you mean we got to stop this guy? What's wrong with him? And it's like, okay, that. And they point over to the side, and it's just this terrifying looking monster thing with glowing eyes and teeth that just don't belong in teeth places. And he's genuinely just causing destructive mayhem. He's already killed everybody at the archaeological dig site. So he's also giving off massive forms of electricity. So that's his other thing. So meanwhile, Apollo charges in. He's like, I don't care what he's got. I'm taking him out. Midnighter and Engineer is just like, what is wrong with him today? So Apollo goes in, tries to punch him out. Doesn't quite go so well because he's being massively electrocuted. And Midnighter's like, hey, all right, so I'm guessing that I need to take out this Freno module thing. Where's that? And she's like, oh, it's somewhere around here. You can't miss it once you find it. So he goes off searching for it. Meanwhile, Apollo keeps on getting knocked down and getting back up again. Engineer tells him to use his powers to basically knock out all of the communications in the area, so that way they can fight in peace without anybody taking pictures of them. And that scene just basically ends with Apollo's going to he's just kind of pissed off for some reason that Midnighter's going to find the Freno module. I'm not sure why. However, Midnighter makes his way into the camper where the professor was. He finds the Freno module and accidentally gets too close, which then causes him to see some things in his mind. He says, like, no more beating, I'll do it better next time, I'll really hurt him, we don't know what he's talking about. Then we cut to the plot that happened at the end of issue 7, where Harry and Emma are in Antarctica and they are just using the technology they stole from Stormwatch and able to basically just spy on Stormwatch. He's just looking around, seeing what else Stormwatch is doing. And Emma's like, you're holding me hostage. How do you know I'm not going to use this to just call for help? And he's like, because you love me. Also, I can kill you. And then we see the villain that they framed for the whole moon thing in the first arc. His name was the Fox. Harry goes and visits him, and he's like, hey, I know who framed you, and I hate them too. Join me, and we will take them out. And he's like, okay. And so Harry just teleports him out of the prison he was in. And that's all we're getting of that issue, but just know it happened. So Apollo's still fighting off the changed professor guy. And Martian Manhunter's trying to get into his head to stop him, but there's literally no way to do that. And then we cut back to Midnighter, who's still being taken over by the Freno module. And the only reason he hasn't been completely submerged is because he has a strong enough mind to resist it. But then Jenny Q shows up, and he's like, Jenny, please help me. And he's like, didn't you try to kill me an issue or two ago? And she's like, I'm okay. That was a mistake. And she's like, okay, you could say sorry then. And he's like, I'm not going to apologize for nothing. And she's like, psh, all right, whatever. And she causes some energy field or something like that stops the Freno module from going off. But it doesn't turn it off. It just redirects the energy to somewhere, somewhen else, which could just show up at any point in the future or past or whatever. And Midnighter's like, Jesus, you got the power to just do that? Maybe I should have killed you. So anyway, once they take out the Freno module, the professor goes back to normal. They take him to the Stormwatch base just to run some tests on him. He's back to normal. He's totally human. He apparently has a 65% chance of increased paranoid schizophrenia in his future, but yeah, par for the course with this stuff. And then Midnighter and Apollo are like, hey, so what should we do with this Freno module? And he's like, well, we should put it away. We should put it in this secret back room where it's not going to bother anything. But then Engineer comes out and is just like, by the way, when we last used this stuff, Stormwatch was a public entity. We made ourselves known. The issue being is that when we did that, it was causing, different countries then came up and started, saying, okay, whose side is Stormwatch really fighting for? And it apparently resulted in the 7 Years' War, which is news to apparently everyone there. They're like, no, that wasn't what happened. And Engineer explains, no. It took us 30 years of rewriting history and blanking minds to make it so that everyone thinks that the 7 Years' War happened for a different reason. But really, they were all fighting over us and the power we gave to them. And the only reason that the 7 Years' War ended, apparently, was because they dropped these Freno modules down on one side and just said, okay, use them and you'll win. So, yeah, they put this thing away and put it in the back room. And Apollo gets to talking about what's really actually pissing him off. And he's like, basically it comes down to the fact of he's part of a secret organization, which, fine, whatever, but he lived so much of his life in the closet. And when he finally has the strength to come out as gay, now he has to keep all these other secrets about who he is and what he works for. And he just doesn't want to do that. And he walks away sadly from Midnighter. Midnighter's like, damn it, I can't help with that one. And that's it. That's where the issue ends. Just a nice little one and done. Yeah, I liked it. I've been liking how Stormwatch has been going for the most part throughout the entire run. I can't really have any fault with this issue as a whole, despite the fact that they have such big ideas with these things, and then they just boil them down to one issue long arcs, and I really want them to just take the time to expand upon it. If they don't have anything more to say, or they have other ideas they want to do, then fine, go with what you're doing. But I really want to see these ideas explored in some way. Stormwatch being made public back in the 1700s. That's super interesting. But it was one panel in this book. and we'll probably never hear about it again. So, I don't know. That's just me personally. Overall, though, I'm going to give this one I give it a 7. I don't know. Something about the Freno modules being introduced, taken out, and taken care of all in like the back half of the issue just felt a bit too easy to me. But I do like the way that, Apollo's dealing with something. It's furthering character stuff across the board. Everyone's got their own thing. So 7 for this. See how they can change it up next issue. Animal Man number 10, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Steve Pugh. Last issue was actually the annual issue, chronologically, so check that out if you haven't. But this issue is 2 separate plots of continuing forward on this. They stagger them throughout the issue. I'm just going to talk about one and then the other. So first off is the family plot, in which we see Ellen and Cliff are brought into a motel room by Constantine. Inside are Zatanna and Madame Xanadu from Justice League Dark. And basically they just want to have a little chat with Ellen real quick. Cliff is like, what about me? And they're like, yeah, what about you? Get out of the room. And he's like, well, fine. Constantine, your jacket went out of style in the 80s anyway. And he's like, yeah, so did mullets, kid. Go shave one. So Ellen basically asks why they want to talk and like what's going on. And Xanadu reveals, I have visions, and I've seen a vision of the world completely like rotted and spoiled and just dead. And the only sign of life left was you and your daughter. And just letting you know that. And she's like, yeah, okay, that's great and all, but like my family is not going to be privy to any of that like super heroic stuff. We're not doing that anymore. And Xanadu's like, no, you don't understand. It's because you keep on being so skeptical and trying to stay away from it that all of this happens. Literally, my vision is all your fault. So then we see what Cliff was doing when he was kicked out of the room. And he's just making his way around the motel. And he hears his dad's voice coming out of an alley nearby. And he looks over and he sees his dad. And he's like, Dad, when did you get back? And he's like, hey, my son, I got a super top secret mission for you to go save your mom and your sister, but you got to stay extra quiet and come with me. I can count on you, can I, son? So he's probably dead, because of course that is one of the hunters inside of his body. So then we see Ellen walking away from the motel, getting back in the RV with the grandma and Maxine. Zatanna stops her from walking with a magic spell, and Maxine's like, what'd you do to my mommy? And Constantine's like, oh, so you're the one who we're all worried about. And he's like, you smell bad. Turns to Zatanna, you smell nice, but you let go of my mommy, I'm going to turn you into a frog. And then Zatanna's like, oh, geez, all right. Yeah, your mom's free. And Ellen's just like, okay, nope, we're done with all this. Leave us alone. We're not going to do that. And they mention how Constantine says, like, look, you need to do this. You need, or else the world will at stake. You need to go find the big green guy. And Ellen's like, yeah, we all know about the Swamp Man or whatever his name is. Not doing it. Goodbye. And then Constantine turns to the other group and is just like, yeah, well, wait until she realizes I wasn't talking about Swamp Thing. I genuinely don't know who they're talking about. It's going to be interesting to find out. But then Maxine and Ellen are just like, man, those people are weird. And then the grandmother chimes in of like, Maxine, where's Cliff? And then Ellen just slams on the brakes like, crap, where's Cliff? So that's the A story, or that's technically the B story. The A story is Buddy and the shepherd guy making their way through the red. They've landed on this island of rot out in the Sea of Blood. Now that I'm actually saying these words out loud, it sounds very strange. But regardless, as they arrive on this little island, they just start beating up these little rotlings, which are just tiny little spider creatures. And the shepherd basically explains the balance of the rot, the green, and the red, and how they all have to coexist. But because the avatar of the green, Swamp Thing, doesn't want to be the avatar, and the avatar of the red, Maxine, is too young, whereas the avatar of the rot is super powerful right now, he's making all these advances, and he's actually got a chance at it. Speaking of which, as they are trying to fight back these spider things, they're overwhelming them. But as they are about to get overwhelmed, the cavalry arrives, and they are these winged dog creatures called the Warriors of the Redlands. So skip ahead. So then we get this shot of just them decimating all of these spider creatures without so much as a problem. And the warrior's like, hey, Shepherd, who's this sack of meat with you? And he's like, hey, this is the father of the Avatar of the Red. And he's like, oh, so I'm so sorry. Thank you for fighting with us. It's been an honor. And he's like, oh, no, the honor was all mine. Hey, you guys got wings, right? Can you bring me to see the guys in charge? And they're like, of course we can. We live to serve you. And so the shepherd's like, man, that was smart thinking. Good job. So they make their way up into the sky to go talk to the like primary people. Shepherd gives a little bit more explanation of like, yeah, no, you can actually walk from the red like to the rot and to the green. Like they are physical places that you can travel to, and every creature is in one of them, some of them closer to others, and apparently flies are like pretty much exactly 50-50 red and rot. Like they split the difference. And so they arrive at this castle where the like elders are of the red, and the shepherd can't go in any further, but he's like, you can go in there and you can do whatever you want, because what are they going to do? And he presents himself before the Parliament of the Red, and he's like, hey, okay, here's the deal. I need to be put back in my body, and I got to go save my family. And they're like, yeah, we told you need to be protecting your daughter anyway, and look how you did. You failed entirely. He's like, shut up and put me in my body. And they're like, okay, here's the deal. We can't, because there's actually somebody already in your body. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah, it turns out one of the hunters is imitating you, and he has your son. So, oops on you. And they're like, well, you got to do something. I don't care what you do, just do it. And they're like, maybe we pick another avatar, because screw you. He's like, no, come on, let me see my family. And they're like, all right, fine. I guess we can make you a new body. And they call in this group called the Tailors, and they will make Buddy a new body for him to come back in. And that's where we leave off. I'm down. I've been down this whole time. I've never stopped being down. I've only been up. And this is just furthering my reasons to think up. It's got a nice little tie-in with Justice League Dark. I don't know how much of a part they're really going to play, but it's basically just telling Ellen specifically that your inaction will be the death of us all. And maybe, like, I think I complained like an issue or two ago that I wanted them to stop being so, like, no, we're not doing this anymore. Maybe this is finally the kick in the pants that Ellen needs in order to just do it. So I'm all for that. Rating-wise, well, I guess art-wise, it's still great. Steve Pugh. Not quite as good as Travel Foreman, or maybe I was just used to Travel Foreman's art. I do like how they handle the inks and stuff on this, but there's just a little bit of something weird about it. But because, I don't know, it almost looks more realistic. I've just gotten so used to Travel Foreman's art, if that makes any sense. It's still good, though. So overall, I'm going to give this one an 8. I love it. I hope that it continues on for more than the amount of issues that I know it has. Like, I hope that somehow I get to the end and there's just more that I didn't know about. But regardless, 8 for this. Loving it. Dial H number 2, written by China Miéville, art by Mateus Santolucci. This is dense and confusing, but also very good, so I'm going to try my best here. So we open up with Nelson, who is just constantly using the dial to change into different heroes, and we see him change into Human Virus, Shamanticore, Pelican Army, Double Bluff, Hole Punch, and finally one called Skeet, as he uses Skeet to go and break up a robbery, and all the cops are like, yeah, thanks, Skeet. And Skeet's whole thing is that he's literally like, you shoot him, he shatters, and then he reforms himself, and then he just flies away. And the cops are like, awesome! But then he has to turn back into Nelson. He's like, man, being Nelson sucks. But he's able to remember everything that happens when he's a hero. So there's that. So he goes and visits his friend over in the hospital, the one who got beat up. And the friend is like, look, here's the thing. I'm part of like this gang or whatever, and our thing is that whenever somebody dies, whenever there's like an old woman who dies or whatever, we just break into their house before the family can come, and we steal their stuff, and we get like documents or whatever. And I don't know, my direct boss is Vernon, but he has a boss named XN, and I don't know nothing about that. So they say like, well, okay, well, why do you need all those people to break into an apartment? And apparently it's because they kept on getting interrupted by some superhero. So there's that as a clue. But anyway, Nelson goes home and he just tries to, he wants to talk to somebody about what's going on, literally anybody. So he calls up his ex, and her name's Julie, and tries to have a conversation, but Julie's just like, nah, I'm not doing this, Nelson, bye, click. And we see that Nelson just goes through like 15 packs of cigarettes all in one dish, and he finally puts down, he's like, all right, screw this, I'm going to have to be a superhero. And he turns into a hero called Control-Alt-Delete, which is just a staticky looking body with a computer monitor for a head. And he goes and he's trying to get to this woman's apartment that they were supposed to break into, just looking for clues. And when he gets there, he sees this cloaked figure break out, and they start fighting each other. The cloaked figure clearly knows more about their powers than Nelson knows about his. But he's like, wait a minute, hold on, I'm Control-Delete. I'm gonna reboot. And he clicks on he like pushes his hand, and then all of a sudden something happens where he like unshatters the screen on his face because the person had shattered it, but then the person that they were fighting just turns back into a normal person. They don't have any powers anymore. And we see that it's this woman who then just runs her way out. And Nelson's like, yeah, that's right, you better run. Watch out for the power of Control-Alt-Delete. And then as soon as she's like, so I was like, oh, geez. that was too much. So he changes back into Nelson, and he's actually glad to change back. He didn't really want to be that hero anymore, but he says he's got to get out before the crew comes back and sees what's going on in the apartment. Then we get a page that I genuinely cannot break down. I'm not sure what's going on, but it's just someone on the phone talking about how they keep on being interrupted by superheroes. Now there are two of them, and there's this figure who was like locked up in handcuffs, who then breaks their way out of the handcuffs and then grabs the person on the phone saying like, I want you to know that you have never been a threat to me. And he keeps on saying ex nihilo, which I believe is the XN, but I don't know if like they're saying ex nihilo is the name of this person that they're talking to, or if it's their own name, or if it's just some concept. I think it's the person that they're talking to, so I don't know. Regardless, he's able to like create poisons and inks and stuff out of his hands, and he can also make the antidotes for those poisons and whatnot. So he ends up spraying this guy in the face with some poison and then just walking out. So then we see Nelson, who is just kind of, he's frustrated. He's just trying to figure out what in the hell is all going on here, who that person was, what they're trying to do. And we see throughout this entire thing that the one who attacked the person with the poison is scaling his way up the hospital and is breaking into his friend's room. Darren is his name. Breaking into Darren's room. And so Nelson tries calling the hospital, trying to talk to Darren, get some more information. And as he does so, this is while he's being assassinated. So the nurses can't actually get into the room as Darren is being killed. So Nelson makes his way to the phone booth, and he turns into the Iron Snail, who's just this like big hefty dude with this giant looking snail shell like tank on his back. And he breaks into the what's it called, the gangster's place. He breaks into there and he just starts attacking them, and he just unloads on all of the gangsters who are there. And as it's continuing onwards, they realize like, hey, are you with the dude who messed with my head and made me all sad? And he's like, sorry, Captain Lacrimose isn't in right now. Can I take a message? So he's making quick work of the gangsters. But then the dude who assassinated Darren comes down, and he's like, of course, you make a fine enemy, but you're slower and not quite as bright as me, so I will always have the upper hand. And he sprays Iron Snail with some poison or whatever in his face, but I guess Iron Snail is not affected by the poison, and the guy wasn't expecting that, so he just punches the guy in the stomach, and they have to, Nelson has to retreat because each transformation comes with a limited amount of time, and he's managed to figure out like, oh, my time is almost up on this one, gotta go. And he's literally running away as he de-transforms. And apparently he just hails a cab at some point. So then the assassin breaks his way up into the hospital again and starts talking to this woman who's on the phone with someone who's like noticed that Nelson just hopped into a cab. So whoever this woman may be, she has red hair, who the woman who was depowered by Control-Alt-Delete also has. Again, this is a confusing book and very hard to recap, but regardless, clearly they have some sort of agreement, despite the fact that the woman is very much not wanting to work with this assassin. So anyway, Nelson makes his way back to the phone booth, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta get changed again, so I can go back there and avenge Darren." But then we see that the woman who he fought before is standing on top of the phone booth, and she's like, "Hey, look, I fought you before because I thought you were with the gangsters or whatever. I know now that you're not, and I know you're using this phone booth. I have more answers. I know you want answers. You have to come with me. And we got to go now because we are both being hunted." And we see just down the street are the gangsters that Nelson was attacking. And that's it. It makes sense when I read it. Like, I gather the events and stuff like that, but there's just enough details left out that trying to explain any given part of it without you seeing what is going on is nearly impossible, which makes it very hard for me to do this show. But regardless, I like it. I like the stuff it's setting up. It's still doing creative heroes. I mean, just in this one issue alone, we got like 6, even if most of them are all just one panel, like who cares? But I like how it's setting up this mystery with a bunch of different sides playing. It's all very confusing on what's going on. But it feels like we're in Nelson's place. Like, we know what he knows. At any point, we are aware of what he's aware of. So I feel like that's, despite the fact that we do get the third person omniscient of us being able to like see what the gangsters are doing at certain points and stuff like that, we don't really know that much more than what Nelson knows. We're just given slight little snippets more, but it's not that much. So overall, I'm going to give this a 7. I think it's good. Not great territory, but I am enjoying it. And art-wise, it is by far the most unique book being put out in the entire DC line. So definitely liking that. But yeah, just a 7 for this right now. We'll see if it improves or, gets worse over the course of the rest of this book. Swamp Thing number 10, written by Scott Snyder, art by Francesco Francavilla. This issue pretty much picks up right where we left off in terms of Abby and Swamp Thing are making their way away from where they just fought Seth, whatever. Swamp Thing is severely weakened and he is barely able to stand. And Abby just loads him up in the back of a pickup truck and starts driving. And this entire thing, the entire sequence of them getting away, is interspersed and overrun with narration and just these horrifying first-person camera angles of this figure just talking to the viewer, saying like, hey, are you there? Are you still alive? Don't worry, I'm not going to kill you yet because I want you to hear this. This is how Abby came to be. And they basically just go through the history of Abby over the course of this. And like every once in a while, the POV shot will black out, like we're literally passing out from the pain, and this figure just pulls back open her eyes. You'd be like, no. I'll don't worry, when this is done, I'll bash your brains in, but for right now, I'm going to tell you what's going on. So, and I'm just going to skip the reveal. The person doing all this is Anton Arcane, aka Avatar of the Rot. So we get a history lesson here on Abby, and apparently Anton has like 50 kids, probably even more over the course of his entire life. But he always knew that Abby was super special. And the reason why is that when she was young, she was reaching out with her powers through like the rot and found this little, like, just a tumor, just a itty bitty tiny little tumor in her mother's brain, and was just playing with it, which ended up killing her mom when she was like only a few months old. And we see her as a toddler just eating this lollipop on the lap of her dead mother. And, so the authorities just thought that, oh, she died of her tumor in her brain. But Anton knew that it was Abby reaching out with the rot. And we get this shot of Abby just hauling ass in this truck across the grasslands. And she passes by this roadkill dog or deer or something like that. And it sits up and peers over at Abby for a second. But then Abby uses some amount of her green ability, whatever that may be, in order to like build a protective thing around the truck of flowers. And then the narration continues over top saying like, I took her back with me. I showed her how the rot works, and she keeps on fighting against it. But she knows deep down, she knows that is the place for her, that she belongs in the rot, not the green. So then we finally get the shot of Anton. He's like, well, that's it. That's the story. So now I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to kill her. And he just bashes the head in of the viewer. And then we cut over to the swamp. And Abby pulls up, and she pulls off the tarp that was covering up Swamp Thing. And he's like, you are looking terrible. And he's like, you should see the other guy. And she leads him over into the swamp outside of the Arcane House, because they are at the Arcane House. And they make their way over into the swamp and see that there are just 7 little spindles of like saplings coming up out of the swamp. And apparently Swamp Thing, when he became Swamp Thing, despite the fact the Parliament was burning, he reached deep into the green, found their essences, pulled them back from the brink of like just death or whatever it would have been, and planted them here, brought them here. They may not come back as the Parliament. They may not have their memories. They may not even come back at all. But at least this way there's a chance that they could come back here. So Swamp Thing needs to go into this swamp in order to heal up. But while he does so, he will be completely unable to like move. He will be stuck there plant life-wise until he heals up entirely. So even if Abby needs his help, he won't be able to. And Abby gives him a kiss and says, you go ahead and take a nap. So Swamp Thing wades out into the water and starts resting. Abby makes her way into the house. And then we see this shadow looming over Swamp Thing from above. And we see that it's Anton. And it turns out that entire monologue, the entire thing of him like looming over this being, was him looming over Swamp Thing, saying all that stuff. So then Abby goes inside, takes a look around, and hears floorboard creak behind her, pulls out her gun, and is ready to fire. And then we see that she is immediately overrun by what she calls unmen, which I assume are rot-infected humans. And she's like, unmen? Oh God, that means it's you. And out steps Anton Arcane, who says, yes, I'm here, I've killed your creature, and I'm here to take you home. And that's how it ends. So not a whole lot happens in this issue, but what little does happen is just magnificent. And the storytelling focus of like that setup and setting it in the POV shot, which was genuinely just like a terrifying view of just this looming figure over top of you and this disgusting look. I mean, it's great. It's fantastic. It's the only reason that I would fault it at all is, like I said, it doesn't do a lot. It gets us to a certain point, but it doesn't like have any major events really happen. Unless he did actually kill Swamp Thing, in which case, yeah, that's kind of a thing. But no, it's great. I'm going to go ahead and give this one honestly, I got to give it an 8.5. It's solid storytelling. It looks fantastic. This 2-page spread of Swamp Thing wading into the swamp to heal is, I don't even know what it is about it. I can't point to any one thing, but it's just fantastically well done. No words at all are spoken, but it says so much. So loving this as I have been, and I can't wait to see how Swamp Thing probably didn't die because, he was in a swamp doing his thing. Night Force number 4, written by Marv Wolfman, art by Tom Mandrake. We are halfway through this thing, and do you remember how I've been saying I need an explanation for what's going on? They did it. They finally did it. The entire first half of this issue was nothing but explanation. But before I get into that, the plot-wise, we open up in that weird cave thing where I guess they are making new creatures. I don't think they actually given a name, but regardless, they are making new things. And we see the only human woman there who's like heavily pregnant. She's finding out that the mother of some Perfect 10 generation, aka Zoe, is still alive and is with Baron Winters, and that would normally be a problem, but because she managed to spit out a Perfect 10 baby, they're like, oh no, it's glad she's still alive. Let's try to get her pregnant again. Anyway, let's get into what everything is here. So this is spread over the course of like the whole issue, but there is still like it's focused. So there is this group that consists of gatherers, harvesters, and nurses. And the whole thing, as far as I can tell, is that they are trying to make a perfect, I think, telepath is the best way to say it, or just psychic ability in general. So what happens is, it's like breeding genetically, is that some people everyone has a little itty bitty bit of psychic ability. However, there are things called dormants, which are able to, with training, actually use it in a very strong and potentially great way. This group is trying to essentially breed them the same way you would like breed dogs for certain traits, are trying to breed dormants to become stronger and stronger until they get to a perfect 10. So it started back during the Revolutionary War, and I can't even remember where that comes up, but regardless, it started back during like the Revolutionary War, and they were trying to breed that. And the way it works is there are gatherers who find the people who are pregnant with these dormants, then they take them, steal their baby or whatever, and put them into a like alien nest is the best way I could say it. Then this alien nest like makes their power stronger. It like shapes them in a certain way so that they are able to have stronger and stronger powers, in which the harvesters then are the ones who like do that. They're the ones who put them in the nest and do all that and take care of them there. The nurses are the ones who make sure they stay alive in the womb, and then once they're born, they keep them for, a couple months, make sure they're able to pass as human, and then send them off on their way out into the real world to be raised by a normal couple. That's the gist of it. That's what's going on. Baron Winters has something to do with it. He has some role to play. Still not entirely sure as to what, but he has some role to play. So anyway, this is all being recounted by the, what's it called? The guy that was, had cancer that Winters pulled into his estate last issue. And he's like, okay, well, thank you for helping me. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can really do, but I can offer you a quick and painless death rather than going through chemo. And he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And he's like, by the way, we found one. We found a dormant, and she survived the attempted murder. And Donovan's like, wait, are you serious? I need to meet her. And he's like, no, sorry, I already promised you a quick and easy death. So Merlin the leopard uses some form of psychic ability to just kill Donovan despite his pleas because he really, really wanted to meet Zoe. And Baron is so broken up over this. He's like, I can't believe I will give him a proper burial. So then we pick up with, I'm blanking on his name, Jim and Zoe, who Jim's going through his old files and he finds a picture of Zoe's mom and is just like, yeah, she was murdered, but she followed the same path that you and your grandmother did. You both were raped and then you had a child and that child was taken from you. This is definitely your mom. And then as they are trying to say okay, well, what do we do from here? What do we do? Jim is like, here's the thing. I'm supposed to be retiring next week, and I kind of don't want to get into a whole big thing. So I will make some calls to make sure, blood work-wise, that is actually your mom. But then I'm just going to find somebody else on the force to, help you the rest of the way. And she's like, you can't do that. You have to stay with me. And she's like, I deserve a break, Zoe. Come on. Cut me some slack. But then Baron Winters calls up calls up Jim. Too many people here. Calls up Jim, and somehow time travels him back to the night where his father was murdered. And they're in his father's study, and he's looking around at his father's notes once he realizes and comes to terms with what it is he's looking at, because he's like, oh, look, also your grandmother had the same thing that happened. And then all of a sudden his father's coming into his office, so they have to hide in the closet. And Jim sees his dad and then also sees the gatherer right behind him, and it's just like, oh god, my dad's gonna die again. I can't watch this. I can't watch. And again, the gatherer attacks the dad, and he's like, oh god, what am I supposed to do? And so he's like, oh, don't look, it's okay. And Jim's like, no, not again. And he busts out of the closet, which then I guess scares the gatherer away. And at that point, itty bitty Jim busts in through the door to see his dad and two figures, quote unquote, running away, which Prisoner of Azkaban style was actually them the whole time. So then Jim wants to go back in to try to save his dad. So he stops and he's just like, no. You said you saw two figures running away. They didn't come back. We can't go back now. We're messing with the timeline, Jim. And so the dad, who saw Jim bust out of the closet screaming, "Dad," he's like, "My son." And he looks at him through the window in his dying breath. He's like, "I love you, son. I always will." So, closure on that regard. And then finally we have Baron Winters, who's like, okay, so that's a lot of weird stuff going on right now. I think I might actually be important to this plot. Maybe I should go talk to that lady who was chained up in London, England, 1648, and see what she has to say. And as he goes there, he walks down to the dungeon, and she's escaped. She's killed all of her guards, and then written in blood on the walls is, "Winters, I promised you'd suffer. It's coming." So there's that. And then as soon as he's down in there, they're attacked by a group of gatherers and other people who are in there. And he's like, "Ha ha, Baron Winters, we finally have you. Your time travel and your future agents or whatever won't be able to save you all the way back here in London, England, 1648. And that's where we leave off. I got an explanation. I now know what the gatherers are and what they're doing. They're looking for psychic people. They're trying to breed them to be stronger psychics and then work for their own group. That's all I wanted. That's all I needed this whole time to understand what's going on. There's still some mysteries in there. Of course there are. But I get it now. So just off that alone, I'm going to give this one a 6. It's fine. I understand it. Whether or not I completely know what's going on, it's allowed to have its mysteries, but I at least know the basics that I need to know to understand the basics to the story. And that's honestly should have been an issue 2, if not 1. So 6 for the fact that you're getting around to it now. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this June 6th, 2012. And yeah, I don't really have a lot to say. Nope, nothing. So I'm just going to tell you what's coming out next week and end the episode, because why should I keep you here with some meaningless fluff? So, next week, June 13th, 2012, we have 14 comics, including the number 10 issues of Batgirl, Batman, Batman and Robin, Superboy, Green Lantern, Deathstroke, Grifter, Suicide Squad, Legion Lost, Demon Knights, Frankenstein, and Resurrection Man. We also have the number 2 issue of The Ravagers, oh dear God, why, and the number 9 issue of The Shade. Yeah, no, pretty much a normal-ass week. Not too much interesting there, I don't think, except for The Ravagers, which is not great, or at least did not leave me to think it would be great when I reviewed it last week. But regardless, that's all from me. Let me tell you about Twitter. It's a place where you can talk, specifically to me, at DC Comics Podcast. All one word, at DC Comics Podcast. Use the hashtag New52, or don't, I don't care. Also, we have the Patreon, if you want to give me money. Tough, I don't make any money from it. But at Patreon, at Mild Fuzz TV, that is Mild Fuzz TV, all one word, you can give somebody else some money, because I apparently do this for free. Why do I do this for free? Oh God. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching or listening. As always, try to remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.